So first of all, I want to start with your father. What was his background in racing before he moved to Swaziland?
Weirdly enough, actually, he grew up in Croydon. The rest of his family, he was actually born in Ireland, but the family moved over to Croydon, and I'm not sure why or how it happened, but he fell in love with horses, and he ended up doing his apprenticeship for Ron Smythe in Epsom.
Not many people move from Croydon to Epsom and move into horse racing.
I know, right? It's weird. One of his other passions was boxing. I think at the time there was always was stable staffs boxing, and yeah, it's one of those. It's a weird move, but like you get that in horse racing quite a lot, actually. You know, a lot of people who just fall in love with horses and travel, stay with them, and like revolve their lives around it. And he just happened to be one of those.
And then a move from Epsom to abroad. What was the process then?
I think obviously back then your apprenticeship was 10 years, I think. Back then, trainer held your license for 10 years, and he didn't quite make the 10 years. That was kind of the way it happened. And I'm not going to say a falling out or whatever have you, but like he potentially, racing's hard. I think he struggled through it, and he didn't finish his apprenticeship, I think, in the end. But, also with horse racing, he found the opportunity to travel. He went to Germany, Switzerland, and he started racing out there for a bit.
And then the move to Swaziland.
Um, Actually, an aunt of mine, Eileen, she owns a chocolate factory now in South Africa, and she'd be the youngest, I think, of the family, and always got on really well with my dad. And she actually went to South Africa as a bunny girl, with the opening of Sun City, and South Africa was taking off at the time, and she moved down there, and I think he was kind of in and out of jobs or whatever have you through racing, and he's struggling a little bit, and through communication with her, she gave him an opportunity to go to South Africa, and I think it was manage a hotel or something like that, and he took it up.
And then the move to Swaziland, where they started a family.
As far as my knowledge takes me anyway, I think he ended up in Swaziland because of the people he was working for there are many hotels or whatever have you. They had hotels in Swaziland, which he moved over there to manage, and you know, Swaziland's one of those places quite captivating, and just fell in love with it and ended up staying there.
And what was it like growing up in Swaziland?
I know, it's like moving from a picture to its negative, I suppose, in a way. But a beautiful place, Actually, recently, I was talking to Adam Kirby. He went down there. He went to South Africa to do the jockey challenge or one of those things. Anyway, he was down there, and he said he nearly shed a tear leaving South Africa. And I was like, "You're only there for 5 days." And he says, "No, but it's just that's a beautiful place." And I suppose growing up there was a beautiful thing in itself. It was extremely different. I didn't leave there until I was 12, so a lot of the place still lies with me.
And did you sit on a horse in Swaziland? Was your father's love of horses passed on to you from a young age?
My father's love of horses became quite a big thing in Swaziland. To be fair, there was always people that had their stables or whatever have you in Swaziland, and competitively horses were normally structured around eventing and stuff like that. But my dad seen a window, and with the sponsorship of there's really like a few casinos and hotels, he was able to build his own racetrack, and got people from South Africa to use the place. They were using it as a stepping stone for their own racing anyway, but he was able to build that up. He had his own bookies there called Tattercells, I believe. Him and my dad and my mum ran that for many a year. I was very young at that stage, and I remember, it was lucrative for a long time, and then, as a lot of things do, without the right backing or whatever have you, it didn't evolve into what he wanted it to be. and it ran his course to a certain degree. And I do remember him having a lot of race horses, which he then potentially had to retrain into show jumpers and eventing, because that, that structure in Swaziland still stood, and he done so. And I think I sat on a horse when I was 2, a horse called Squeak. He used a horse called Squeak, and I remember he was riding it one day. For whatever reason, I remember being very young and getting on his back, and it lost the plot. I remember clinging onto it like a tick, but I was small back then, right? And never sat on a horse for I think until I was 9 after that. But I'd done it on my own back, on the back of that. But I remember that being a situation. And then by the time I was 9, he had got rid of all these horses, and even the bookies was gone by that stage.
And then the move back to England, age 12.
Yeah, it was one of the. I started riding. I got off the bus one day and I went with a friend of mine. He started riding for some reason. I was coming back on the bus, and we used to obviously stop past where the yard was. And he said, "Oh, I'm getting off here. I'm going riding." And I was like, "Really?" And with Swaziland, there is a sense of freedom, even the way you're raised. As kids, it wasn't a big thing for me to get off the bus from that stop. I went, "I'll get off with you. See what all this is about." And I went there and started riding with him. And I remember one weekend, I'd done this for nearly a month. With no knowledge of my mom and dad, they worked extremely hard. And I was all at home before they were. But I remember turning around and saying to my dad one weekend, when I'd learned how to do the sitting trot, or the rising trot, sorry, and all of that, right? And I said to him, "Oh, Dad, any chance you can take us down to the yard?" And he was like, "What are you on about?" And I was like, "This Sunday, can we go down to the stables?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to introduce him to all these, do you know what I mean? All these people and the new adventure I'm on and whatever have you." And I remember he was like, "Yeah, no problem." Yeah, I got in the car, drove down to the yard, got in there. He walked out. I was just about to say hello, and everybody greeted him like they knew him forever. And I was like, "What's this about?" I was like, it was quite it was weird, but I think that's kind of the way it started with me. It started as my own passion, as opposed to something that was forced upon me or, even wanted of me.
That's so important, I think, isn't it, to sort of keep, not to make sure it's something that you wanted to do in your life and your career, rather than something that just your father wanted you to do.
Exactly, and I think potentially I think that's what gave me the bigger love for it. Is it was something that I decided. I had the background in horses, the idea was always there, and I could always pursue it whenever I wanted to, but it was never forced upon me. So I think that in itself is kind of what's given me the inspiration to keep doing it anyway, or the joy to do it.
And Ireland, you moved to Ireland, was it age 12?
I was getting close to my teens, and I think my dad just seen a bigger picture, so to speak. It is great growing up in Africa. Don't get me wrong, especially in your younger years. But when it comes to opportunity and whatever have you, I'm not saying it's non-existent. It's difficult. And I think he's seen more potential over here, especially because I was riding. And I think we moved here obviously to fulfill that potential.
And your dad went back to work at Ballydol, or he had not been there before? Was this the first time he had been to Ballydol?
It was the first time. To be fair, he hadn't rode in years. I remember even in Africa, he started coming riding with me and stuff, building himself back into it. And I think, that was his idea. That's what he wanted to happen, and he knew coming over here. In fact, we moved to England first. I think he wanted to actually start in England, where he started. He found it quite difficult after living in Africa for as long as he did, and so did we as kids. We moved to Croydon, and I remember looking just buildings and rock everywhere, and it was like, wow. We grew up with a vast amount of freedom, and it felt like being caged for a little instant. But I remember when we moved to Ireland, I think he thought it'd be better moving to Ireland, and he was right, So we moved over there, and it was a lot easier. and also like, you know, with the potential of him going working in Coolmore, like I think it was a better introduction.
And what was it like for you walking into Ballydoyle that first time as a teenager?
See, this is the thing. See, I hadn't seen how yards were before Ballydoyle. That was the first place I walked into, so I thought like this is the norm. This is the norm. This is what, you know. And this is what horse racing. This is what horse racing is. This is what we aspire to. And I didn't find it difficult until I moved to England. Like when I'd done my apprenticeship, it was a very privileged one. Um, I wanted more for myself, not personally, and I moved to England. And I remember, actually, I was with David and Mara for a couple of years, and I started up there. And I remember walking into the yard, and I was like, "What have I done here?" You know. But it was everywhere. Everywhere I went in England was like, "What have I done here?" And but like, it's only because like I'd walked out of Coolmore.
And what was Aidan O'Brien like as a man to you, as a trainer to you? Did he, you were a young man when you went there. Did you learn a lot there?
He took the time. He took, you know what I mean. He took the time to give you an apprenticeship, if you know what I mean. Like I remember sitting down through a lot of moments, you know, which when I was learning, being told the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do and whatever have you. But like, I remember being there and actually serving an apprenticeship. You know, you find over here now, you can take off quite quick over here, and it just becomes riding in winners, you know, without necessarily benefiting from actually serving an apprenticeship. But in Aidan's, I felt like I did serve an apprenticeship. You know, I remember I was signed on for a whole year before I had a first ride. You know, like it was like you had to build to certain moments before you got opportunity, and you had to deserve those opportunities, so to speak. And I remember actually, like, one of the things about doing my apprenticeship over there is that, like, I actually felt like I served one.
And you obviously got given some good opportunities. You rode a few listed winners and a group winner.
I actually, like, I remember not understanding the concept of a handicap. It's actually a truthful matter of it. Or the concept of having a claim. Because, to be fair, it was fairly irrelevant for them. Like, there wasn't the benefit of you having a £7 claim because of the quality of horse you were riding. It didn't really matter. You know, there was maiden winners, listed winners, Group 1 winners. You know, they're in the business of making stallions, not necessarily just training Group 1 winners.
And then the move to England. Why David O'Mara?
I think he was up and coming at the time. Actually, it was Mick Maloney, I think it was, a fella in the yard. And he happened to know him, and I was getting to the stage where I was old enough with a claim, and I think a lot of people seen the benefit of going to England, especially for me. And you know, a lot of people put themselves forward, and David Mayer was one of the people that come up because he was going really well at the time. It kind of happened like that, really.
And then the move to down here locally to where you are now, Herridge and Everley, for Richard Hannon Senior. How did that come about?
That was a weird one, actually. Kieran and Neil. I used to live with Kieran and Neil's brother, Brian, when I was in Aidan's, and Kieran was apprenticed to Richard. I wasn't necessarily struggling up north, but I kind of wasn't getting what I wanted out of it. I was struggling with riding out for 100 trainers and moving up and down the country, and Kieran had a good job in Richards, and I was kind of like losing my claim without actually getting anywhere. And I was talking to Kieran one day, and he says, "I come in and ride out," and I come in and ride out, and I kind of seen the potential. It was a big yard, which is something I was used to. You were given quite a free rein, and I wanted to save my claim, so I decided, you know, instead of chasing my own tail up north, I thought, like, take the opportunity, and I asked them would they sign me on. They took me up on it, which was great, and I hibernated for a year and then used, like, I think I had only 20 winners into the season. I used that as a starting point. I lost my 20 winners fairly fast. But he allowed me to ride, obviously because I started the year as an apprentice, you can finish it as an apprentice. So I actually remember chasing the championship with no claim and done quite well.
And Richard Hannon Senior is an incredible character. Tell us what it's like to have worked for him.
It's another thing. It's like I went from having quite a well-structured apprenticeship and, got the opportunity up north, and then, felt at home, obviously, working for Hannon. But then he was another educational experience. And I remember ringing him when I had 5 rides from one day in Lingfield, and I rang him up. My first 5 rides from him, and I rang him. Like 1 o'clock was an evening meet in Lingfield, and I rang him, and he was like, "Who's this?" And I said, "Oh, it's Sean." I said, I just want to talk to you about these 5 I'm riding for you today." And he goes, "Where are you riding?" I said, "Lingfield." He goes, "5?" I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Well, boy, if you don't know how to ride by now, do you know what I mean? You shouldn't be a bloody jockey." And he hung up the phone, and I was like, "What?" But like that was the first understanding of free reign, and understanding like, look, he's done his job obviously, and like it's kind of my job to do now. And it's been like that ever since.
And do you think that's the way you like to ride as a jockey? Do you think that gives you confidence to be able to make your own decisions and learn that way?
I think it depends. I think I was at the right time to hear that. I think you can also be an apprentice and hear that, and you have nothing to, you haven't got the foundation to structure that upon, and it could be a bad thing. But when you're old enough and wise enough, it's the best thing in the world to be told that, because it instills a certain amount of confidence in yourself. And yeah, I think it was the right time for me to hear something like that. It could have been very different if I was younger and hadn't had the foundation of the apprenticeship I had leading up to it. It could have been very different.
And you started riding all better quality horses. You started riding in classics, and then a day at Newmarket that you'll presumably never forget aboard Bilston Brook. You did come into the race as 66 to 1 shot, but I remember there was some confidence around her that day.
Yeah, there was my own confidence around her. That's about it. I remember it was funny, right? Because she was a good 2-year-old, but she went up the nursery route. So like her potential again to Group 1 level was, she was very far behind that. And I remember riding her through the winter, man. She looked awful. She had a winter coat one day. I rode her in Kempton before the Nail Gwyn. And there was always something about it, she was a quality horse, there's no doubt about that. A little bit tricky, but like some days she'd show you a little bit, show you enough to inspire you to get the Disney dream, and you think like, oh, actually this could win a Group 1, but like, she'd only do it the odd time. But I remember riding in the Nail Gwyn, and she was keen. Oh, she pulled my arms out all the way down to the 2 furlong marker. And I actually gave up in the end. Like I thought, there's no way you can pull this hard and actually finish somewhere. And I let her go at the 2. And I remember finishing 4th, thinking like, how did she run that well? She also ran in the field that she was going to face in the Guineas anyway. But I remember like thinking like, she was that keen and she finished 4th. And I thought like, you know what I mean? There's a lot to work on here. And she worked, and she actually worked really well one day. And I remember Tom Marquand, actually, he rode, can't think the horse's name now. It won the free handicap, and it went into the race as a 12 to 1 shot, as opposed to me on the 66 to 1 shot. And I remember thinking like, I actually wouldn't swap anyway, because I thought like, no, this thing's actually all right. And I all remember going like, I got a lift with Tom and Holly on the day, and we went down the 303. We stopped off the BP garage, and I remember going in and buying like box of prawns. I always like get prawns, and I actually got the cocktail sauce to go with it, like in the tub, and I was sitting in the back just eating the thing. And they were like, how can you eat that before you ride? And I was like, just chill out, Willies, right? And I went to sleep. And then I got to the races. But like the whole day, I never even went through the race. I was just thinking like, all she's got to do is settle, like. Do you know what I mean? Just settle, and we'll work from there. And I remember her jumping out the gates, and I took her off her. I let her jump, and then I took her off her leg, so to speak. I took her back, so to speak, right? And she just dropped the lot. Because I think someone swerved in front of me, and she kind of half shied, and then as a result, she dropped everything. And I didn't hush her or do anything. I just sat and I went like, that'll do. And I just left her alone. And she just settled the whole way through the race. And I remember like going past the 4. I remember looking at the 4, because like in Newmarket, you don't see the marker poles. They're actually reversed. So if you're running from the mile, you're the first 4 furlongs, the marker poles are turned around. So you just see the back of them. So you don't see the numbers, right? So you don't know where you are until you get to the 4, because the 4 is actually the one that's turned around towards you. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, pole, 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 pole. And then I see 4. Then you're thinking, right, 4, it's still, you only gone halfway, right? And I remember getting to 4 and I was like, nah, don't worry about it. Just leave her where she is. I just left her alone. Sylvester de Souza riding upsides me. And he's starting to get animated. He's getting animated. I'm thinking like, just past the 4. I was like, he's off the bridle. And I looked at it and it was like, oh, no, we're not at the 4 anymore. Like, we've gone past the 3.5. We're just coming into the 2. And I was thinking like, right, now you're in my way, mate. So I actually turned around to Sylvester. I was like, let me out there, will you? And he was like, yeah, give me a minute first. Because there's always that concept. He doesn't want to like make it quite obvious that he's coming out of my way. He's giving his horse every opportunity. He was off the bridle from the 3. He's coming down in the 2. He's still off the bridle, but he's saying like, I'll let you out as soon as my horse like is done with its running. And I was like, no problem. And like the wind, like it was, what was her name? Lauren's making the running. So there's your potential horse you have to catch. And she's like 10 lengths in front of me. And I'm thinking, phew. No, seriously, dude, I need to catch that, right? And then next thing he was like, okay, go on then. And I remember just pulling her out. And it felt like 3 strides later, I was upside her. And running into the like furlong and a half marker. Like I was just like, went from pulling out, I'm just there like that, looking at her. And then like, then the imagination, get inspired, don't you? And I was thinking like, there's no way this can be true. And I went like, just get on with it. Gave her a kick and she just took off. She went past Lawrence, down the dip, up the hill she's running. But then you start thinking to yourself, 66-1, you're in front. There's gonna have to be someone that was behind me going as good, do you know what I mean? And you start thinking, oh, you're gonna get chased down here. You just get all animated, just rushing for the line. Sense of panic, so to speak, and then you hit the line and it's like, well, it's done. Then you look back at it and you look back at the thing and you're like, oh, shit, I could have been so much more stylish there, you know that? Do you know what I mean? I could have gave that an inspired ride, flapping about on it.
And what do you remember sort of from the aftermath and the reaction? Your family, from the yard, from the media, everyone, was it quite nuts?
For me, straight away passing the line was a sense of relief. Gone a long time dreaming the normal dream of winning the Derby or whatever have you. And then you get to points in your life where it just become, oh, I'll take any Group 1. You know, it's not as if I didn't have opportunity. Like, I was second in a lot of Group 1s and whatever, and I just felt like, oh, Jesus, it's just never going to happen. And over time, it goes from Derby to, you know, I'll take Guineas, oh, I love a Classic, and then it just filters down to just any Group 1 will do at this stage. And I think that's where I was. When I passed the line, I was like, okay, at last. Do you know what I mean? Thank God for that. I thought I'd never get it. I could have retired on the back of it. I was like, that'll do me. But like, that was the first thing. And then there was a lot of other things that happened afterwards, which was, I don't know, unique, a bit rare. I remember when I got interviewed and it was a match happening or something. He says, how does it feel to be the first black jockey to win a Classic? And I was like, what are you on about? And I thought that was weird. And then I have a picture inside of riding a 66-1 Group 1 winner. And it's like the whole crowd, right? I got a picture inside. It's like the whole crowd are just looking at you like that. And there's one guy in the crowd waving about, like one person. And it was a packed stand. And I thought like it must have been quite surreal for them as well. Like just going like, you know what I mean? They had backed, obviously, every other horse in the race. And you come across with a 66-1 shot. No, not like crushed dreams, so to speak.
There must have been some people you know that were on though.
No. There's always going to be the guy who tells you, oh, I had a favour on that one. But that's, come on.
And do you think the confidence that you got from that day would you say that's a moment that has changed your riding, or do you think that you always knew you were that good?
No, it's not. I think I never thought I was that good. You know, I think, and a lot of jockeys I think will relate to this, is you get to the point where you know you're good enough, there's no doubt about that, but then without the horse, it's the horse that does the running, man. And you know, I think a lot of jockeys get to points where you can be quite successful without the opportunity, you know, and you can go a long time. Good horses are few and far between, and just getting that opportunity to come across one is quite rare in itself.
And you've broken down a lot of barriers yourself, but you've done it by working hard and riding winners. Do you ever see the questions about breaking down barriers in your own ethnicity a distraction?
Never thought about it. It's like I said, even when I won the Guineas and they said, how do you feel to be the first black jockey to win a thing? I didn't really relate to it at the time. Listen, racing's quite diverse anyway. It always has been. You know, if you've ever walked into a yard, it won't take you long to understand that. And you know, we're going through a time, I suppose, where diversity was an issue, like globally, not within racing, but just like globally anyway, and it reflected into racing. Whereas, like, because I was in racing, I'm not saying it didn't sit well with me, but like I was, you know, taken aback a little bit when I suddenly was, you know, the one opening doors where, you know, as far as I seen it, those doors were always open and there for anyone to walk through. You know, I still feel the same now. You know, racing's always been diverse or whatever have you. Yes, it's a niche kind of sport and it hasn't got a direct line as most sports do, but you know, it's the opportunity is 100% there and it always has been, I think. I think what people didn't understand, like dwelling on trying to make it diverse, it always has been, without trying to dwell on the diversity of it all, was you should probably concentrate more on advertising the fact that the opportunity is there for everyone, you know? And I think that's kind of what we lacked on, really. It's just people don't get it. And to be fair, anyone in racing, after a while, you tend to understand that we kind of live in our own little bubble. You know, it's not very open to the public. For the normal world, it's very hard to understand. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you can't walk into it tomorrow and see for yourself, kind of a thing, you know?
And Sean Levey as a jockey now, you've ridden countless Group 1 winners now, you've ridden some top class horses. What continues to motivate you?
I don't know, I suppose I like it. Well, gotta love it, don't you? It's a life choice now. It's not just a game anymore. Like it's my livelihood, and I'm just lucky enough and privileged enough that I enjoy it. I think that's basically what it's become now.
And do you have any future goals? Do you have any more targets you want to?
Minor things. I'm kind of quite content, and I tend to enjoy it more. You know, I just enjoy it. That's just the best way of saying it. I just enjoy doing it. But I've got minor goals now. Need to get to the 100 winners. You know, that's eluded me quite a lot recently. I normally go down with some sort of an injury or something normally stops me from reaching that goal, but it's now become the monkey on my back kind of thing. You haven't rode the 100 winners, so like that needs to get that sorted. But other than that, no, I'm good, man. Just want to continue enjoying it, making the best of opportunity. You know what I mean? Like it's like one of those, like you find good horses in the rarest of places. And there's a nice thing about riding not necessarily your favourites, and I'm not privileged enough to have like the full-on opportunity where you're riding favourites in every Group 1 all the time. So ultimately, I mean, you're sitting at quite a high percentage of Group 1 winners, but I do enjoy finding the rare Group 1 winners, the flukes, so to speak. You know, the ones you kind of believe maybe as such, and then they do, and you know, there's a lot to be said for that.